All right, ready? All right, so now we're gonna talk about lens selection when it comes to the headshots. Now, in the last video, I couldn't tell you everything because that would have taken all the time in the video, and you guys probably not gonna sit around and watch it. But this is the Canon 5D Mark II, and it is paired with the Tamron 90mm macro. Now, when doing headshots, you want to really be sure that you have a good lens with a good focal distance. Now, it doesn't have to be the best lens in the world. As a matter of fact, most lenses are sharp enough to work. As a matter of fact, most people don't want the sharpest lens in the world, but it's way more important that you have the correct focal distance. The reason why I'm using a 90mm macro, like I said in the last video, is because 90mm gives you good proportions of your subject's face. When I'm using the 90mm macro, I'm not worried about making my subject look like an alien or wide and pudgy or anything like that. This is probably one of the sharpest lenses that I have ever seen. And you might be saying, well, why would you want a super sharp lens for a headshot? Well, when you're in post and you're trying to make sure you have a clean look, a lot of people like that sharp look. So when they go back in post and do retouching, they can figure all that stuff out later. If you have sharp features and things of that nature, it shows well in your portraiture and it gives you value from your camera body, because if your camera body is a high megapixel body, then you can take advantage of those pixels later in post. You probably don't want a lens that is 50mm. You probably don't want a lens that's 60mm. You probably want to stay at that 70 and up range. Now, there is a little tolerance there. You probably don't want to go over 200mm. Some people don't like the 200mm look because it looks very abstract and you just slaps you up against the background. Some people do. You're doing headshots, most of them is between around, I want to say 85 to about, I want to say 200mm. You can do 70. 70 is good, especially if you're outside and you want to show some of the background. But as for this, you really want to stay with a lens that you are comfortable with, that you know how to focus, and that gives you a really good focal distance for headshots. So that means your kit lens probably won't work at 18 to 55, probably won't work. If you get a 50 to 250, make sure you're staying within that range, that it doesn't make your subject look all distorted. This is the lens of choice that I love to do for all my headshots. And when it comes to your settings, you want to make sure that you're at a setting which keeps most of your subject's face in focus. You know, something like a 2.8, if you know how to focus it, you can get away with it on a full frame camera, that's great. But if you can't focus it or you can't keep them in focus, try 4.5, f5.6, f8, f11. It'll work perfectly for headshots, especially if you don't have anything to blur out in the background. The last thing I want to talk about is crop frame versus full frame sensors when it comes to lenses. Crop frame sensors get you closer to the subject. Full frame sensors get you farther away from the subject. You want to make sure that if you're using crop frame sensor, a 50mm would be more like a 64, 65, 68-ish millimeter, depending on what kind of camera you have and what crop factor it has. You're going to have to do that research on your own camera, but this is a full frame sensor, so that means that 90mm is 90mm. If it's a crop frame sensor, you're probably magnifying that to a certain degree. You might add value to your lenses if you have a crop factor, because that crop factor brings you closer to your subject. All right, being said, I'm done with CenturyFX Studios. This is the lens choice that I have. Affiliate links will be in the description below. Patreon, subscribe, so we can do more videos like this to help you guys out. And if you support the show, we can do a lot more with the show. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for the next episode. All right, so the next thing we're going to